What is up, you beautiful happy hustlers out there? Kerry Jack here, and I hope you're having an amazing day. Just enjoying every moment, but especially this one right here and right now, baby. In this episode of the Happy Hustle podcast, we have on Mr. Scott Ford, who is the managing director and partner and wealth advisor at Carson Wealth. And he serves entrepreneurs, small business owners, executives, and families. Now, his firm specializes in comprehensive wealth management using their Way2Wealth proprietary process. His personal and proactive approach is designed to bring clarity and simplicity to the complex issues of financial management. And he is a registered financial consultant and has been an active financial technical analyst since 2005. Now, work-life balance is very important to Scott, and on occasion, he has been spotted hosting conferences from his massage chair in his office. Scott is a lifelong learner and spends his free time reading and writing, and has published 3 books, including Financial Jiu-Jitsu, A Fighter's Guide to Conquering Your Finances, The Widow's Wealth Map, 6 Steps to Beginning Again, and the New York Times bestseller, The Sustainable Edge, 15 minutes a week to a richer entrepreneurial life. You guys are going to love Scott Ford's just energy and his take on building wealth and building a life you love. And he is also partners on the Legato family, which we had on previously, Rich Christensen, who is an amazing man, and he connected Scott and I really enjoyed this conversation, and I know you will too. So stick around to the end. Now, without further ado, after a quick message from this episode's sponsor, we are diving into this episode of the Happy Hustle podcast. And real quick, guys, I just want to give a massive shout out to this episode's sponsor, Nootopia, who is making the best nootropics on the market. I'm talking brain optimizing supplements. You guys get the hookup by going to nootopia.com/happy hustle to save. So if you want to make more money with your mind and optimize that brain, check them out, because these things are really powerful, and they come with 9 different proprietary blends in that world domination box, and you get the hookup. Nootopia.com/happy hustle. Now let's get back to this episode. All right, Mr. Scott Ford, welcome to the Happy Hustle podcast. I am so excited to connect.
Great to be here, man. Thanks for having me, Kerry. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, we have a ton in common. You're an avid martial artist and a hunter and an outdoorsman and an entrepreneur and an author and a happy hustler, man, through and through. Like, you really are doing it. And I was really excited to connect after, especially Rich, our good buddy and mutual friend, connected us. And I'm really excited about this conversation, because here you are, happy hustling at the highest level. You know, you have that blissful balance, and that's what I'm all about. And I'm excited to dive into how you got there and talk about, the Legato family and the Way2Wealth and your different principles and strategies. But before we get into all that good stuff, what's something interesting about yourself, Scott, that not too many people know?
Yeah, so I would say this ties a lot of things together, Kerry, and that is permaculture and sustainability. And that word gets used, means different things to different people. It's overused, I think, at this point. But the idea, just regeneration, like really working with what is instead of blasting it with our thought process of what is, but like working with nature as intended. So wife and I bought, 145 acres here in West Virginia, probably 2013. And ever since, man, we've worked on creating what we're calling a Garden of Eden. That's what we talk to each other about. How can we create a Garden of Eden here? And we're working towards it, man. It's really coming alive. And what's been so fascinating is to see, this may sound a little woo, but nonetheless, I'll throw it out there, because I believe, and by the way, a decade from now, me talking like this, I'd be like, what? But now I'm like, no, I get it. It's like the land with this care for it, instead of just beating on it, it's like it's coming alive. And so, we had someone from Maine in to help us with a master plan last year. He was like, man, your land is loving whatever you're doing. I'm like, we're just doing like what it wants to be done. So I would just say permaculture. Most would not know that about me, my passion for working with nature and the land as it's meant to be from my perspective. And that includes how to use sustainably keep bees as an example. Like that's a passion of mine as well. How can you keep and work with bees versus how I think our society has embraced beekeeping? It's been like, how can we get the most honey versus actually how can we keep bees the way they want to be kept, keep them healthy. And then, by the way, one of the fringe benefits is, yeah, you can get honey too. So that's a passion of mine. And I would wrap it in the envelope or frame of permaculture that most probably wouldn't know that about me.
Oh, so cool, Scott. I'm really glad you went there. Sustainability, regenerative business is a passion of mine as well. And my brother and business partner and best friend, he has a business called Eco Breakthroughs that I'm a part of, an investor, and he is fighting the plastic pollution epidemic as well as climate change with these upcycled eco centers that basically, as you mentioned, where you have the circular economy, as you do with permaculture, we do it with this plastic waste, and we upcycle these different bundles of plastic into an actual eco cycle, which is a plastic bicycle out of 100% recycled plastic waste. And it's so cool to see how you can reuse things in nature and things that we've created and create more sustainable practices. And I also spent some time with a good buddy of mine named Oliver Gaucher, who is big into permaculture, and he built down in the Mayan villages of Guatemala. And my mom lived in Guatemala for 5 years, so I'd go down there a lot. And he had his whole setup, which was so cool. Like he had the chickens on this top shelf, and then they would take a dump and it would feed the worms, and then the worms would feed the plants, and then they would go back up and he'd feed the cows with the this. And it's like, and then the water would drip from the roof. And it's so cool how you can live with nature and not exploit our natural resources to their detriment. And it's just such a great point. I'm curious, what would you say is the biggest takeaway, just in terms of all of your permaculture and your practice and what you've acquired, that you can share with the happy hustlers?
I would say that the takeaway is this, and we'll end up getting to this when we're talking about even some of the stuff with Legato, and that is working with what is. And so what I've learned in embracing permaculture, which isn't that old, it started in 2013. Good friend of mine now, Michael Judd, he went and lived in Nicaragua for, I think, 15 years to help them with sustainable systems. So really, really solid human being. So he showed me this. And then also Ben Falk from Maine, who has a company that will help with these sustainable setups. So in doing it, what I've learned is two things. One is what wants to be here. So like we can come up with a plan and you can plant stuff and then it doesn't work. And then, let's replant that. It doesn't work. And then all of a sudden, I'll give you an example. We put a hugel bed. And what a hugel bed is basically, you may notice, you're putting these trees that are down. We dug a pond, had all these trees. They were going to yank them out of here. And I'm like, no, I got a plan. So I put all the trees down. We put the brush on top of it. Then we dumped, from what we dug in a pond, 2 foot of topsoil on top of it. And that captures all this rain that's coming off the hillside, sucks it in, creates this great organic matter that you can plant on. By the way, when Michael saw it, he's like, oh my gosh, this has got to be we call it Mount Hugel. It's got to be the biggest hugel bed in North America, because I didn't know what I was doing. It's freaking huge, but it works. And what I learned from it was we put all kinds of, we probably went 3 different times planting something. And finally, this mint just starts like on steroids. It's just cranking, and mint and comfrey. And I'm going, why don't we just replicate that? And ever since we went with what it was telling us wanted to be there, it's on fire. It's like, it's loving life. It's doing what it's supposed to do. So my takeaway would be, work with what is. Don't force my agenda or our agenda on it. And then I'll add to that, I had mentioned Legato, which I know will end up at some point, and that is, came up with this framework of 7th generation thinking. And before diving into that, I'll just say the idea here is learning from the indigenous, learning from our ancestors. I think today with technology, and I've been there, we get caught up with forcing what we want onto things and doing our things. Oh, but that's old school. That's, hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Like, that's so outdated. And I think the problem with that is we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. There's immense wisdom to some of what they learned and developed. And I think pairing that indigenous wisdom from our ancestors to today with modern technology and bring it up to 2021 is where the magic is. And that's where I've landed. Like, let's not throw that away. Let's use it and let's bring it in today's current time. And then we can co-create with it. We can even make it something new.
Yeah. Oh, so well said. I mean, and I think of, this biohacking bender I went down. I ran a biohacking company for like 3 years, and we used what we said was ancient wisdom and modern science in the exploration of human potential. And that's really what we can do in our businesses. We can do it in our personal lives. We can do it in our yards, on our property, the ancient wisdom and the modern science. And it's a blend of both, right? Now, I do want to give the Happy Hustlers just a little backstory, and I want to hear, kind of what got you into entrepreneurship. I know you started from a very early age, so just give us a little backstory on who Scott is and how you got into the entrepreneur game.
Yeah, happy to, man. This is just me being me. This is my story. So easy to share. And so for me, I did okay at school. I was in some academic classes. They thought that I had ability to. I just never really excelled. It wasn't my thing. And so I look back now, I share with my wife and others, and they laugh. I was like, I always thought the teachers loved me because I was always the hall pass guy. And I'm like, yeah, I got it. I'll take it. And it's just because like that framework didn't work for me. I had to be moving. So I would take stuff. And I look back, I'm like, oh, they just wanted to get me out of the class. So anyway, I did okay, but never super excelled because it wasn't just, I don't know. I didn't feel like I fit. And then early on, I was always been curious, and I embraced learning things at a young age. And one of them was magic. So I learned magic as a kid, about elementary school, and then really serious in middle school. And I'd do tricks in school and everyone loved it. I'm like, yeah, this is pretty sweet. So I'm like, you know what, I could do this. And so I started doing birthday parties for other kids. I had doves, I had a rabbit. My parents, they probably weren't too happy about that, but they were good enough to let me have them. And then they would drop me off. And I'd do these birthday parties. And if memory serves me right, it would be between $50 and $75 based on how long a show it was. I had my little tux. I did the whole thing. Nice. Then I would go to restaurants and do some table magic. And so anyway, that was the birth of me being an entrepreneur. I'd mowed yards and did all that stuff, but magic was the main thing. And then that led me right out of school to get into business. And I was intrigued with finances as well. And the reason, that sounds boring compared to magic, but the reason is watching my folks struggle. Like we didn't have money, and, they had a good life. They just didn't have money. And I can remember Dad always saying, hey, if we move here, we'll build a pool. And so all the kids, I'm the youngest of 5, would be like, sweet, let's move. Well, guess what? We'd never get the pool because they didn't have any money. I can remember my mom, it left an indelible mark on me. I've seen my mom cry. She passed this year about 2 times in my whole life. And the one time I came home from school, she was weeping at the table, at the dining room table. And I was like, this isn't good. And so went to the bedroom, and I could overhear, and I came to find out they filed bankruptcy. They were in that bad of shape. So I'm thinking, man, this shouldn't be that complicated. So it just left the mark on me going, I want to figure this out. Like money shouldn't, what's up with this? And so right out of school, I got into financial services, and I've never looked back, man. This has been my path. And I've always had this quest of simplicity. How can you make it simple? And then, with the goal of helping people fully live, because I can look at mom and dad and they had a good life. They didn't fully live. And one of the big hurdles and hangups is because of money and because it was freaking complicated. So that's what got, there's a lot more in between I can color in, but the long and short of it, that's how I started in entrepreneurism. I've never looked back. And then one of the things I did do is in 96 founded Cornerstone Wealth Management. And the idea there, Carrie, was how can we act as like a family office for these business owners and entrepreneurs, is who I love to serve, because it's who I am. I mean, I feel like we're kindred spirits, and simplify this piece where it can be like a one-stop shop for them. So that's always been my quest, and it still is today with what I'm up to today. It's through that lens of making money simple for business owners and entrepreneurs so that they can have the freedom to leave the mark they want to leave.
Man, such an awesome story. And, it really is something where I feel people do complicate finances so much. And it really puts a lot of stress on individuals when you don't have your finances in check and you're living paycheck to paycheck and you're in debt, and there's, you know, there's issues with, paying for things or groceries. It's like it's no way to live. It's no way to happy hustle a life you love. And I've been on both sides. I as you have. I didn't come from money, and I had two very entrepreneurial parents. My dad was a mechanic and my mom's a chiropractor by trade, but both had that, that grit, that hustle. But we had to earn our own way. And I've been a entrepreneur since a very early age, and failed forward business after business, learning along the process. But now more than ever, I'm taking my finances seriously and thinking proactively rather than reactively. And I'm learning throughout the process, but now how to save and invest and spend wisely with a system that works for you. And I'm curious, I know you have a system. I know you have a proprietary process with Way2Wealth, and I want to dive into it. Break it down for us. Like, give us the Way2Wealth proprietary process if you can, and how to apply it.
Yeah, sure, Kerry. And I'll start with, if it's okay, just framing it.
Yeah.
So for me, I live by four things, and I got this from Benjamin Franklin and added one on the end, and it's health, wealth, wisdom, and happiness. So he would talk about healthy, wealthy, wise. And I'm like, that's cool. And what if we're not happy? Like, if you have all that and you're not happy, what's the point? So for me, and I came up with this 4-piece framework of healthy, wealthy, wise, and happy. And it'll tie into the Way2Wealth. So for healthy, it's spiritual health, mental health, and physical health. Like, they're the key components for being healthy. And then wealthy, it's being economically independent or financially free. Like, if we can check that box, that is a piece. Finance is a piece, but it's just one box. Yeah. And Way2Wealth checks that box. So I'll come back to Way2Wealth. Yep. Then under financially free is having enough. Like, when you realize you got enough and you got an abundance mindset instead of scarcity mindset, man, that's when you are financially free. It's like, I got enough. So that's the second tier down. And then the third under wealth is love. To me, that's what this whole freaking game's about, is love. Yep. And so it's like, what's interesting for me, people come to us for the help me be economically independently, financially free. That's that Way2Wealth. And I'm trying to drop, and when we then want to drop them down to what the game's about, which is love. So that's the third piece in wealth. And then wisdom is living in the present moment, and look, I say this now, and I can say it now because I lived it the other way. Like, I just busted my freaking hump, and it was just like work to dig out and trying to figure it out. And it's like, all you got's today. All I have right now is a conversation with Kerry. So let me maximize, be here with Kerry, and just share whatever I got, and like, just soak this up. Like, that's wisdom. And then having lots of experiences, like, do different things. And that's where wisdom comes from. And then lastly, in wisdom, being a lifelong learner. That creates wisdom. And then happiness, the fourth pillar of this whole frame, is having healthy relationships, having a dream that you contribute to each day, and then being grateful. So like, that's my framework that I live by. That's the framework I want to share with the world, for those who it resonates with. And it just so happens the entry point for me most times are people coming to see me to say, Scott, help me with my money. Cool. And we do that through the Way2Wealth. So I can dive into that when it makes sense. And if not, happy to do it.
Yeah. I mean, well, it does make sense now to dive in. And I just want to extract, the happiness part. Like, here you have someone like Scott. He said he's been on the other side. I think many people have, where you just focus so much on profit and success, and it's like, and I was there, like, with my tech startup in New York City. Like, we got to 7-figure VC funded deal. We got these partnerships with Microsoft and IBM, and I burn out. I couldn't take the money. I moved to Bangkok, Thailand. I lived there for 10 months and figured out a better way to live, and, put the happy in my everyday hustle. And that's kind of what I'm all about. Is I love how you broke it down. I have something somewhat similar with the 10 alignments of being a happy hustler. It's all covered in my new book, which I'm going to send you a copy of, Scott, so you can dive in if you so choose. But one thing I just wanted to extract is how you have to have happiness in the equation. It's just like, it's not enough to just have the health and the wealth and the wisdom, but the happiness is what we're all searching for. And true happiness, it does come from within. And it also comes when you're serving others, when you're,
Totally.
when you're giving back to others, when you're making a positive impact, when you're changing lives, when you're thinking not just for yourself and your own personal gain, but like how I can actually make a positive impact on this planet. And I love this framework because that's what this is doing. You get them in with the money entry point, and it's almost like that thing where you sell them what they want, but you give them what they need. You know what I mean?
That's it.
And everyone wants more money, and everyone wants to have control of their money and have it work for them. So let's dive in. Let's hear about the way to wealth process and how people out there listening, the happy hustlers, can actually like apply it.
Yeah, 100%. I'll jump in. One more comment I'll make, Carrie, is
Yeah.
like, so my purpose that I've written for life is every moment presents itself for you to serve it, for you to lift it. So that's it. It's that simple.
Yep.
We have this concept with this conversation. Can I lift it somehow? Can I share something that's meaningful? So like, that's the purpose. So I just wanted to.
You're already winning.
Well, I just wanted to echo it, man, because it's like, that is spot on. And then just thinking about the actual way to wealth process on this financial piece, I ask people, look, here's what I'm going to do. What if I told you we're going to run you through the way to wealth and you're going to have $1 billion when we're done? What do you think about that? And everyone's like, sweet, sign me up.
Yeah.
And then I say, and you're going to have miserable relationships and you're going to be more unfulfilled than you've ever been your entire life. Still want it?
No.
Absolutely not, right? So that's the frame. That's why it's so important to frame it right. So all that said, just kind of gives context to where we're headed. So the way to wealth, this is it. I also got this from Benjamin Franklin. So you can see I'm a fan of our ancestors going back, and Benjamin Franklin being one of them. He had a book he wrote called The Way to Wealth. So what I do, I took ancient wisdom and I started developing this in 2001 with current technology in our current times. So I called it The Way, the number 2, and wealth is an acronym. So here it is. The Way. The Way is the Taoist theory and philosophy of being in harmony with all things and living in the present moment. That's the way. So most everyone in this industry is going to say, hey, man, Carrie, give me your money. 30 years from now, you're going to have all this money. And I'm like, you got to plan for 30 years from now. I got it. What about today? Like, so let's use money so you can maximize today in 2022. So we start there. That's the way. Sounds small. It's huge. But that's, so we start the way with that. The 2's the team. So the 2 simply means there is no one smart enough to have all the answers. So you need a team. So we operate like a virtual family office, and I recommend it. So what I would tell people, look, you just want smart people around you. Make sure they don't have huge egos, and make sure that they're team players, that all they want is the best answer for you. So the question I always ask people, or encourage people to ask, is, would you enthusiastically rehire or refer your current team to family members and loved ones or friends? And if you have to hesitate, you just got your answer. If it's an absolute yes, well, you got your answer there too. We just want A players on the team to handle that too. And when I'm saying players, when you're thinking of wealth, you're thinking of CPAs, tax attorneys, estate planning attorneys, business attorneys, investment people, insurance, bankers, cash flow experts, these players on the team, right? So that's the 2. Then wealth is an acronym. And by the way, this is all in a 1-page document. You can trace this the whole way back to why I started in business. Let's make this simple and get it all on 1 page so you can wrap your head around it, thinking of my mom and dad and these early business owners. So the wealth, the W is, what's your foundation? So once we know what it's about, it's living now fully, we want to have our team in place that are A players. Now with that team, let's look at the foundation. So we look at a tax reduction plan. We look at estate and legacy plan. Aha, shocker. Now you can see where Legato fits in. We look at asset protection, because as business owners, you could be accumulating a lot of money and in a litigious society, have it taken away. Then we look at insurance maximization. No one wants a little bit of insurance. We want as much as we can get. We just don't want to pay much for it. So max coverage, minimum premium, right? Then interest rate and credit. Let's make sure that's efficient, potentially even set up our own bank. And then lastly, cash flow. So if we go through this whole 6 pieces of the foundation, it ultimately should lead towards more cash flow and more control which is what the whole financial game's about. Cash flow and control. That's it. Then on top of that foundation is E in wealth, which E stands for established savings. All right. So we have 3 buckets that sit on top. The first bucket's savings. We want emergency opportunity money. So if we hit a pandemic or who knows what we're going to hit, we want savings. And most people say, Scott, I am savings. Look at what I got in my 401k. I got this company match and I'm saving all this money. No, you're not. You're investing. That's not savings. So we want to make sure first we got a savings bucket for rainy days, for emergencies, and opportunities, because those rainy days bring opportunities for those that have capital and access to cash. Second, on top of the foundation bucket is income. So the A in wealth stands for all expenses covered by income, passive income. This is income you're not hustling to get. This is income your money is hustling to get. So when we have savings on top of the foundation, bucket 2, we have investments that are kicking off enough income to cover all our expenses. We're economically independent, financially free. Then the L in wealth stands for living with inflation. This, how do you live with inflation, is growth. So the third bucket on the foundation is growth money. With the foundation and first 2 buckets covered, we can freaking swing for the fences. You may want to buy a business. You may want to put it in the stock market. You may want to buy in a startup, whatever you feel called to that you're good at and can have control in. Let's have growth money. Then lastly, the T is tax diversification. We want to have tax deferred, taxable, and tax free. Most have a bunch in tax deferred, which I call tax postponed. You're going to pay tax someday. And if taxes are up, that may not be the best place to have it. You just want to have options. The person with options wins. Then the H is have it updated annually. That's it, man. Wealth management on one page. That's literally, I've been doing this since 91, how I run our household finances.
Oh my goodness. That was straight fire, Scott. I'm telling you. I mean, all the happy hustlers, literally pause it right now and just go back 5 minutes. I know I'm going, dude. That was absolute gold. I mean, just cover the A one more time because I'm taking notes, but cover the A. What was the A exactly?
100%. So all expenses covered by income. Yep, that's the A. And then that's where the bucket 2 comes in, Carrie, where we want to make sure what we always recommend is at least 10 years of income covered. And look what that does. If we would start there and we have another 2020 and you lose your job. Well, if you've set up the foundation so you know that you're protected, you have minimum of 1 year in savings. I didn't say that before, but we recommend 1 year. I have way more than that because that's my comfort level. And we have 10 years of income covered through of how we've allocated. And then the growth money's like 10 years plus. You're not stressed about it. You're like, I got 10 years before I even have to worry about it. So that's the piece that can come from it.
So awesome. And you mentioned it's on one page. Is there a link where people out there listening could go and maybe download it?
Yeah, totally. We have a PDF that we could make available and have the link for sure.
Awesome. We're going to link that up in the show notes, guys. I highly recommend taking action on this. And it's just so important to go through this way to wealth process. And one thing that you mentioned just to kick things off was the way, which you mentioned Taoism. I've been studying with a Taoist priest and a Kung Fu master since I was a boy. I'll have to introduce you to him. His name's Master Chen. He was actually on the podcast as well. But I love the Taoist approach to living in harmony. And it's so cool that you mentioned that as a part of money and your way to wealth. And then 2, as the team, having like a team that actually supports you. Like I just pisses me off when people say they're self-made. It's like, no, you're not. No one's self-made. Like no one is self-made. We all have had help around the process. And I don't obviously let it get to me, but it's just like, come on, man. Like, you're not.
Yeah. 100%, man. Totally agree. And, being a business owner and entrepreneur like you can relate to this and your audience as well. When you think of your team, what do you want? You want A players on your team because that's who's serving the clients that you're bringing value to. So how do you have A players? Well, there's all kinds of modalities and methods from top grading to others, or the book Who of how to hire and retain A players. What's the same thing for your financial team? It's just we don't look at it like that way.
Yep.
You're the CEO of your personal finances. How can we have A players? And asking that question, would you enthusiastically rehire them? And if you have to hesitate, just like in business, if you ask that with people that work with you, you know your answer. And the other thing that I like to ask is, would you go have a beer with them?
Oh, yeah.
Because I think your
good
team, why
question.
not? Like, why not have your financial team where it's like, you know what? I can hang out with this person, because then you're not going to dread the freaking meeting that you're going to have talking about numbers that you're bored about anyway.
Yeah.
So
I love
good
it.
question.
I actually, and it's so funny you say that. Even if you go on my website right now for the Epic Camping Adventure, as a qualifier, they have to pass the beer test, meaning I actually have to want to get a beer with them, or else you're not coming on the trip, because I'm not taking you into the wilderness with me if I don't want to be around you. You know what I mean? And
I know it's it.
and that goes for business too. So I love that you included it. Now, I do want to just recap like the wealth part of the Way2Wealth. What's your foundation, really getting clear tax reduction plan, state and legacy. And we're going to get into legato and how that plays, the asset protection, insurance, interest rate and credit, and cash flow. What, just in terms of cash flow particularly, because this is where I think a lot of entrepreneurs struggle, a lot of business owners. Like, first of all, they like to talk about the gross number and not necessarily the net number,
Yeah.
So talk to us just briefly about cash flow and how to potentially increase cash flow without, like cutting corners. You know what I mean? Like, some people, like, they cut their margins by cutting corners. I don't want that for the happy houses, but I do want to increase cash flow and give them like maybe a tactical tool or tip. Is there a way to do so?
Oh, 100%, man. You're speaking my language. So first, I'll just say, look, done right. Well, let me first say that is a pet peeve of mine in business, is that, because I've lived it, is that a lot of times we're lying to ourselves. And we're lying to ourselves is because we don't have clean numbers. So we're saying, like you said, our revenue's X and we had this much in growth in revenue. Cool. And what's your bottom line?
Yeah.
What's your EBITDA? What's your cash flow? What's your profitability? And we run expenses through. And I'm not saying do or don't do that. I understand all of that thought process. You need clean numbers in your business and personal finances to make good decisions on what to do in the future. So this is not rocket science. This is just getting an A player bookkeeper, hire them, outsource it, but get clean numbers. And for years, I didn't have clean numbers. And I'll share this. And I'm in the business. Now, my personal was, but the business wasn't. And it's because the firm doing it, they were playing games with the numbers. They weren't doing a good job. Where this came to light is my first acquisition years ago. When you do an acquisition, you've got to have clean numbers. And that's when I saw, what do you mean we're doing this? And then I hired an A player to replace them. So anyway, clean numbers, man, is where it's at for you to have a clear line of sight. The cash flow piece is this. So when you think of the foundation, the ultimate goal is protection, thus foundation. This is our base we're going to build upon. And done right, you're plugging leaks. You're creating efficiency. So as we go from left to right on this foundation, from tax to estate to insurance to asset protection to interest rate, all of these things done correctly saves money, creates more cash flow at the other end. So we want to create efficiency as we go through this foundation. So what's our biggest expense in business? Probably taxes.
Yeah.
So, and certainly we could think a team and our labor costs, but probably taxes, or at least it's a big one. So what can we do legally? Because that's what the tax code is. They're telling you what to do based on the code that will benefit you. So you just got to read that playbook and say, what am I doing? And I think where people miss here goes back to the two. A lot of times, I believe compliance work, which is doing the actual tax return, versus tax strategy are number one, two different things. And number two, a lot of times two different people. So there's no judgment there. You need them both. But a lot of time people will have compliance people who are great at compliance, but they're not providing strategy to minimize that tax, which can create more cash flow. And that why I start there is most people in the industry are going to say, Carrie, what rate of return are you getting on your investments? They're already on the growth bucket. Oh, you're getting 5%. I can get you 10.
Yeah.
Well, can you, first of all, how many years in a row? Second, all right.
Yeah.
And versus if you're paying 100,000 in taxes and we save 50%, that's 50 grand. And that's 50 grand this year. And that's 50 grand. And every year that you implement that strategy for the rest of the time in your business, like, why not start there? So that's how you increase cash flow. And then you do it for estate. You do it with interest rates. You look at how can I restructure? You don't necessarily have to change banks. You can negotiate. All those things make sense, but maybe just focus on what one is taking my most cash and then structure it in a way where it's more efficient, creating more cash flow for you ultimately. Same with insurance, all kinds of redundancies typically in insurance. Let's eliminate those duplications. Let's increase some deductibles. And as we work through efficiency through the bottom, it creates more cash flow and control.
So well said. I mean, first, just going back to clear numbers, and I'll put my hand up here, guilty as well. Like, my numbers have not been clear this year. They're clearer than they ever have. Next year, they're going to be even clearer, and it's like, it's so important. First, just keep your personal and your professional, life, like in terms of your business, your personal expenses, your professional expenses separate. Like, that alone can make a huge difference for your end of the year's tax savings. And then just having this mindset of, okay, starting with the opportunities and the savings and you mentioned the tax reduction plan. Like, sometimes you need a strategy and a compliance tax accountant. Those might be two different people. That's a big takeaway for me because, I think a lot of people try to just get one go-to financial person for all of it, and oftentimes they have different expertise. So it's really important to get the right number two team together. And then really just going down from left to right in the order that Scott's talked about, having your state and legacy, your asset protection, insurance, interest rate, that all increases cash flow. You might think, oh, I have to get 100 more customers right now, but really you can increase cash flow by actually looking at what you're doing right now and how you can find opportunities within it.
That's it, man. You just nailed it. So you could do what I do. Basically, that's it.
I don't know about that, man.
When you think of interest rate, like, you could just tweak what you're doing there, doing a credit review. It's amazing to see. I did one, I'll do it every year, and you'll see errors I saw years ago, and that's affecting my score. No, it was still great. It could be better. That can help your rate, which creates more cash flow. So almost always going through there, it's things you're already doing, just reconfiguring in a way that actually creates more cash flow for you. And I also want to add on, you said something that I really liked on separating the business and the personal, why that's important. And what I have found, because I've lived it. So I'll throw this out there and we'll see what your audience thinks, right?
Yeah.
So you're in business, you start in business, you're busting your hump because you're a hustler. That's why you're on this podcast. And you get to the end of the year and you have your meeting with your CPA, your accountant, and they come in and they're like, hey, here we are. So just want to plan for next year. Here's what you owe in taxes. And you're like, I owe what? Oh yeah, this is a $200,000 tax bill that's going to be due by April 15th. That's not, how do we get here? Because I don't have 200,000 in the account. Where's my profit? Well, you're doing good, but you owe $200,000. Have you ever experienced? I did. Yeah. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm busting my freaking hump. I'm the first here, the last to leave. I'm cranking. Everyone's paid. And yes, I'm taking a salary, but what? And so I think it's critically important that you separate, because I know it's important to have growth. I'm a big believer in scaling, and your biggest asset and best asset, your business. And I think it's critically important that you segment it in a way that you can create profits from this company that you can benefit from each and every year and see that benefit on your personal sheet, because that's what keeps you from burning out. That's what keeps you to have the juice to go, okay, I get it. And the only way to do that is clean numbers. So we come up with a one-page financial pack for the business one-page financial for the personal, and tie these together. So I think that's really important to make sure that you can reap some rewards now versus 30 years from now when you may sell this business.
Yeah. Oh, so well said. I mean, having it too on a one pager, which is so clean and simple to understand, I think is the difference between actually applying it and reading it versus just letting it become a document that just collects dust. And one thing with financial, gain is financial literacy. For me, that made the difference, for my journey, like just educating myself on financial literacy, like reading books that actually, talk about the difference between a stock and a bond and an IRA versus, like the difference if you are out there listening right now and you don't know the difference between a stock and a bond, you have the power at your little fingers right now to educate yourself. And, I've read a couple books that I can think of that really, shifted my perspective. I don't know if you've ever read Money Master of the Game by Tony Robbins, and I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi, and Tax-Free Wealth by Tom Wheelwright. And some of these books, now I'm still very much on my financial journey. Like Scott is leaps and bounds ahead of me in terms of his knowledge, and I'm acquiring knowledge and increasing my financial literacy as you are just from hearing Scott. But it's the yearning to grow in this game, this financial game, is what will take you from where you are right now to where you want to be. And I just think it's so important. Do you have, besides, and I want to get into, your books, but do you have one of your books maybe that, like, if someone was just thinking, I want to get started and learn more about like what Scott's talking about, is one of your books like a great starting off point?
Yeah. So you know what I'll say to that? You mentioned some great books, and I'll add one to it that you all probably know, but I'll throw it out there just in case, is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So I'm sure you've heard that book, and that's about cash flow, and it's like spot on. And so I have three out there, three books. I'm working on book number 4. It'll be out next year,
awesome.
likely. And it's going to be The Way to Wealth. And the idea of The Way to Wealth, the way I'm viewing this book, is the Rich Dad, Poor Dad for business owners and entrepreneurs.
Love it.
Like, that's it. Throwing the family office into it. That's the lens I'm viewing it through, and that's the lens I'm writing it through. So that should be out sometime in 2022. A lot of work has been done on that the last 2 years. So I would anticipate 2022 that will be available. So that would be probably my best recommendation for now, is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I think it's clean. I think it's concise. It talks about cash flow and why it's important. And look, The Way to Wealth ties to that. It's more thorough, in my opinion, The Way to Wealth, because I've been doing this since 91. But yeah, man, I would recommend that book.
Awesome, man. Now I do want to get into Legato and, the inspiration behind it, first of all, and then like exactly this awesome infinite wealth continuum that you created, because it really is how you explain it and how you and Rich like broke down this infinite. It's one of the most genius things I've seen. And I don't say that to stroke your ego. I'm serious. It's such a well articulated version like of what truly happens in life. And although I haven't experienced all of it to the degree you have, it's such a great representation. So break down Legato in this continuum, please.
Yeah, totally. So, and look, no ego in it, Gary. And I say that because, and I can say it because I really don't think it's coming from me. I think I got some of this through some work that I've done, and I feel like it was gifted to me. So
you can talk about plant medicine. We talk about it.
Yeah. It's like, it's gifted. It's like, hey, this is where it's at. So here it is, Infinite Entrepreneur. So is the download I feel like I know I got. And the Infinite Entrepreneur is like, what are we all after? Well, we want to be infinite. And if we're an entrepreneur, we want to be an infinite one. And this is taking what Rich talks about of the force. That's the wealth continuum, where we're just cranking, man. We're just getting after it. And there's some fun in that. We all have been there and done that. And then we can go so far down on the bottom of that infinity symbol where we get lackadaisical. We're not quite engaged. And all of this creates a mess as well. So we want to flip that sideways. And this was the vision I got, was, Infinite Entrepreneur. And it's 4 parts. You just heard, The Way to Wealth. So there's 4 parts. It's values, it's life, it's finances, and it's business. And what I had put together is two things. One is an infinity symbol, was the message I got. And you start, ideally, you can plug in anywhere, but the best place to plug in is values. Like with what Rich is doing, which is genius. This guy, I tell him all the time, I'm like, man, you're a healer. Like he spent 2 days with my wife and I, which do some deep stuff working with families and how do we do that. He is a healer. He's brilliant at it. And that's that value stuff of the values, the symbols, the traditions, the doctrines, the defining moments, rites of passage. Beautiful. And then structures where I come in. Well, starting with those values, like how cool would it be to get your family aligned on core values and cultures and mission statements and rites of passage and all those things, to then take to your business to figure your core values, to then take to, if you want to be charitably inclined, make sure that that matches the core values and what you're about. Anyway, I think starting there. Then from there, I talk about life, living life, which I say health, wealth, wisdom, and happiness, which I shared. Then I say, let's structure our finances in the infinity symbol, which is, to me, the way to wealth. And then I say, let's have a sustainable business. Let's have that be infinite. And in that, I call it the 4 Ps of a sustainable business. It's purpose, it's people, it's process, and it's profits. The 4 Ps of a sustainable business. And that's the symbol. With those 4 things in place, it can be infinite. It can go on beyond us. And the biggest takeaway is you can live a life in flow instead of in force. That's the infinity symbol, infinite entrepreneur.
Oh, so awesome. So well said. In flow rather than in force. I mean, if you think about it, if you're trying to swim upstream up a river, you are not in flow, you're in force. But if you alter your direction and go with the current in the season of life, you will be in flow. And I think that just distinction, looking at what season you're in life and how to flow with, life in the current and use this infinite entrepreneur continuum it's so beautifully and for me being a visual learner, like it was so beautifully articulated, and I want the happy hustlers to actually see it, so where can people go to see it, to learn more about it, and to actually maybe apply it?
Yeah, 2 things, Carrie. One is I'll provide a link, and then Legato, the website, will have a link. And that leads me to what I didn't mention. And so what you'll see on this, which is important to me, is the colors. So in doing the work with Rich, which is not that long ago, my wife and I did a deep dive 2 days. He came here to our place, spent 2 days doing his magic. And one of the things that you do when you create your values is then symbols. When creating your symbols, you come up with colors. Well, I knew her favorite color and I knew mine, and she vice versa, but he wanted you to pick a couple. So I put 4 colors. My favorite color is red. Her favorite color is red.
Oh, cool.
Then I put black and white. They're my favorite colors. And then we're red, black, and white. So if you look at any of my books, they're almost
that's
always
my
red,
logo, man.
There it is. That's it. Oh, and yellow. So the 4th is yellow.
Yeah, there you go.
I had no idea. So the 4th is yellow. Well, guess what? She had the same colors. And I was like, I had no idea. So here's what came of that. She's currently in American Indigenous Studies. That came from some ceremony work as well. So she's cool. Getting a degree in American Indigenous Studies. When you see this symbol, this is Native American colors. This is their wheel. This is the red, black, white, and yellow. So it's like, that's what we're doing. We're making the invisible visible with this work, bringing that ancestral wisdom to current times, using what was great that they had figured out, like rites of passage that Rich shared. They did that. We've just lost it. And thinking what we're calling this, the actual process, the 7th generation families. The reason we're calling it 7th generation families is because we call the process the family constitution, which I originally got from my dear friend and yours too, Garrett Gunderson.
Oh yeah.
And what I added to that and keep work to refine and simplify is this 7th generation of families. So you think of the family constitution. Well, it's like our existing constitution. Well, where did it come from? So as I was doing research with the family constitution and with our US Constitution, they would counsel with other people. So who they counseled with mainly was the Iroquois Nation, the Iroquois Confederacy, Native American tribe. And they had what was called the Great Law of Peace. And why they wanted to learn about that, because it was around for hundreds of years and most things didn't last that long. Well, they took lots of good things from it. They left two things out. One, seventh generation thinking. Two, the role of women in government and leadership. So I'll just stick with seventh generation thinking for our time today. Seventh generation thinking is this: the elders in this community would get together on a decision that needed to be made. And the first question they would always ask: how is this decision going to affect 7 generations from today? How's it going to affect our family? How's it going to affect other families? How's it going to affect the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, our water, our land, our soil? How's it going to affect 7 generations? And I'm like, that's part of why we're having some struggles we're having today. So my thought on this is naming it 7 generations comes from that, taking this indigenous deep wisdom, pairing it with today's technology and current times to mold something new out of this ancient wisdom. So that's where the colors come from. That's the depth of it and the power of thinking in 7 generations. And that's what we're doing, man. So it's like, how can I think and structure something in such a way for my family, for my business, for my life, in ways that it can have a positive effect 7 generations from now?
Oh, wow. I mean, I love it. It's so different to think about that type of long-term sustainable, 7 generations from where we are today. And that's what it takes in order to create something truly sustainable, is have that foresight. So I love that you went there. I mean, legato, guys, is one of those things that has truly changed my life. And I'm just at the tip of the iceberg. I'm going through it for my own family and really starting to create my family with foresight, with this 7th generation thinking, with these strategies that Rich and Scott have created that really do create a legacy, that create cultures and traditions and customs and unity. It's so cool. I really think this is going to just change so many lives. And I'm excited to just support it and be an advocate for it and a participant. Again, legatofamily.com, and we'll have a hookup code in the show notes as well if you guys want to check that out. Now, Scott, I do want to ask you the rapid fire round questions. And this is basically where I ask you random things and you answer honestly, first thing that comes to mind. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. Favorite movie? Go.
Oh, not much of a movie guy, but let's see. Braveheart.
Oh, good one. Favorite book?
Oh, Think and Grow Rich.
Oh, yep, that's a great one. Favorite food?
Oh, venison.
Ooh, nice. What's your spirit animal, Scott?
Oh, easy. Black bear.
Oh, I love black bears. Super cool. Have them in the garbage regularly in Montana.
Yeah, and a matter of fact, I know this is rapid fire, that our emblem is going to be a black bear paw, because both my wife and I, black bear is one of our spirit animals.
Oh, so cool. Definition of work-life balance?
Flow.
Love it. Best business advice?
Show up to serve.
First hustle. First thing you did for money?
Magic.
Love it. And 3 things you're most grateful for?
Man, grateful for life, grateful for nature, grateful for relationships.
And last question in the rapid fire round. If you had a billboard for the world to see with your last piece of content on it, what would that billboard read?
Live fully now.
Bam! Crushed that rapid fire round, Scott. That was impressive.
Dropping the mic, even though I don't have one.
Yeah, that was awesome. I just dropped my mic. I don't know if you guys could hear that, but I'm holding it currently. Now, I do want to just acknowledge you, Scott, for just sharing your love, your light, your wisdom. I mean, with myself and the Happy Hustlers, this was an amazing interview. And seriously, I just feel so connected to you and your mission and what you're up to and how you show up in the world and just your vulnerability and sharing your wisdom as well as your strengths. And, I just think it's rare to find someone like you who has gotten to the other side, but it's also so willing to share and the trials and the tribulations in order to get there, and what you're up to with Legato and Way2Wealth and your impact and your sustainable mindset and just your woo-woo wisdom. I'm so about it. And I appreciate you, brother, for just rocking the mic, man.
Yeah, well, thanks for what you do. This is our first meeting, man. So I just showed up to be me, and that's what I did. But I could see your light, and I see you for sure. So I respect what you're doing and want to serve and support it any way I can, man. So keep being you and doing what you're doing.
Thank you, my man. I received that. Now I'm going to open up the floor. If you have any final words before I ask you the last question, any final words for the Happy Hustlers out there?
Mm. Enjoy the ride. It's we are hustlers and we're all entrepreneurs. If you're listening to this, and just don't forget, all you got's this moment. Enjoy the ride. Make sure you live life fully now, man.
Oh, love it. Now, one more call to action, guys. Check out legatofamily.com. Again, definitely worth the time. We're going to link up that one pager as well in the show notes. And you're going to want to pick up his new book, Way2Wealth, and we'll link that up as well. Now, final question, Scott. What does happy hustling mean to you?
I'll go back and be redundant and repetitive potentially, but it's flow to me. When you're in flow, you can hustle because you're serving the moment. You're going with it. You're bringing energy to that situation and being happy and fulfilled in what you're doing with that service. Is the word that I'll use is being in flow. That's happy hustle. Flow with it.
Love it. Scott Ford, everyone. Thanks for watching and listening. Peace and love.